Those F-16 fighters that arrived in Ukraine must first adapt to work in a combat zone, Ukrainian military expert Konstantin Krivolap noted on the air of the telethon, commenting on information about the arrival of several more aircraft in Ukraine. According to him, F-16 pilots must adjust, get used to these machines, and time is also needed to establish normal interaction between service and technical personnel. Increasing the number of aircraft also means increasing the number of places for storing them, landing and changing airfields. There are many infrastructure problems here, the expert noted. At the same time, Krivolap emphasized that despite all the problems created by US President Donald Trump, the F-16s continue to operate effectively in Ukraine. Good interaction between the MiG-29, F-16 and Mirages in the distribution of zones of influence and tasks when performing specific missions overlapping each other. That is, some drop bombs and others provide cover so that there are no missile strikes, the expert explained. At the same time, Krivolap did not specify what problems Trump created, but it is likely that he is talking about the decision to suspend aid to Ukraine. Recently, President Volodymyr Zelenski announced that several more F-16 fighters had arrived in Ukraine. At the same time, the head of state did not disclose the exact number of fighters that were added to the capabilities of the Ukrainian Air Force and did not specify which countries they came from. As is known, several countries are providing Ukraine with F-16 fighters. Among these countries are Denmark and the Netherlands. Thus, in early February, Ukraine received a batch of F-16 aircraft from the Netherlands. Then, Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov announced the arrival of the first Mirage 2000. According to him, these aircraft will perform combat missions, strengthening defense and the ability to effectively resist Russian aggression. Belgium is also supposed to hand over the aircraft. However, it has recently become known that this process is being delayed. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever stated that combat-ready fighters could be delivered as early as 2026. It is known that at the end of 2023, Belgium announced that 30 American F-16 fighters would be transferred to Ukraine. The country took this step because it had acquired a new generation of fighters, the F-35. The first aircraft were planned to be transferred by the end of last year. Media reported earlier that Ukrainian F-16 pilots are becoming bolder, which is why the threat to Russia's Su-34 is growing. With the help of improved tactics, Ukraine is trying to neutralize the F-34's heavy bombing capabilities, reducing their combat effectiveness and undermining Russian aviation.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer met military leaders from a coalition involved in Ukraine peacekeeping planning in Northwood in England on Thursday. According to Associated Press, senior military officers from more than 24 countries across Europe and beyond met to flesh out plans for an international peacekeeping force for Ukraine as details of a partial ceasefire are worked out. Starmer said it was vitally important to ensure that any deal put in place is defended. A deal without anything behind it is something that Putin will breach. We know that because it's happened before, and I'm absolutely clear in my mind it will happen again, he said. Ukraine and Russia agreed in principle on Wednesday to a limited ceasefire after US President Donald Trump spoke with the country's leaders this week, though it remained to be seen when it might take effect and what possible targets would be off limits to attack.
See you in the honey meeting.
We're very pleased that you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Ми дуже раді, пане прем'єр-міністр, що вас запросили. Вдячний за вашу непохитну підтримку в часи скрути і невизначеності.
Prime Minister, we are very glad to be invited. We are very grateful for your support during these your unwavering support during these tough and challenging times.
Well, it's very important, and you're very welcome, and it's very good that we're at this level of planning, which is, I think, the right level of preparation. So be assured of our support.
Дуже вас вітаємо, дуже правильно, що ви тут. Ми вважаємо, що ви дуже в правильному місці і дуже правильно триматися на запевнених вас. Thank you.
Last weekend and 2 weekends before that, we had groupings of international political leaders coming together to provide the political alignment and the collective agreement that we need to work together to ensure that any deal that is put in place is defended. What's happening here is turning that political intention into reality, the concept into plans, whether that's in relation to what might happen at sea or air or defending borders. And those plans are coming together, and I've met some of the teams at the meeting to work through the details. But it is vitally important that we do that work, because we know one thing for certain, which is a deal without anything behind it is something that Putin will breach. We know that because it's happened before, and I'm absolutely clear in my mind it will happen again. Therefore, what you're doing here today is vitally important to peace and security across Europe, and for our NATO allies, and of course, crucially, for the United